And we're
Hello! We're live. We were told by our producer to make sure not to wait, and as soon as it hit 0 to say stuff. So both Bianca and I just spoke over each other.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, Bianca, and hi, everybody else joining us. Welcome to A/B testing.
Yes, this is great. I will say we're far apart again. So we were on the same screen last week.
We're on the same stream couch last week.
Wow. So that was good. That was pretty solid. Did you have any highlights from that? Like what was some of the stuff?
All of it? Are you talking about so last week we were our whole team, the whole developer network at Twilio got together in San Francisco at Twilio HQ and got to meet up. And as part of that, we did a stream live with some really amazing guests.
Yeah, that was pretty good. We called it Stream Friends.
It was so much fun. Just like having people come in and out. The energy was so good. The conversation was flowing. I think my highlight is I knew Emily and Nathaniel, who were the first two guests. Like, they're great. They're great on stream. They're always going to be great on stream. And then we brought Kiara on, who's the leader of the DevNet, and it was just an amazing conversation. So I think that was the highlight for me because it was just kind of unexpected, super fun, and a different vibe that we don't always get to experience.
No, that's real. It felt like you know how you have like your capstone project, like your final projects. That's kind of what it felt. It's like, did you do all the things that you learned on stream? So I felt like we were pulling in all the things like, all right, look at your guests, focus here. Like, I feel like we brought it all together and it just felt really good. And I feel like even us being able to do an in-person stream after I think that one was number 10. It was pretty exciting. But now we're on stream 11.
Wait, and I just want to shout out our lovely producer, Chef Brent, traveled with multiple cameras, multiple microphones, like soundboards and video boards and all the stuff to make us stream happen. And just huge shout out to Brent for actually making it happen. It was such a pleasure and an honor to be able to do that. And I just appreciate it was one of the highlights was setting up with Brent for the 2 hours before the event, seeing how much fun Brent had getting it set up. Like his eyes were just like huge because he was like, oh, putting all the cameras together and all the sounds together. And it was so that was actually a huge highlight for me because this is the kind of thing that you only do if you really are passionate about it. And we're here having a great time because Chef Brent is super passionate about streaming. And Chef EB gets in his element, as Roberto said. And just huge shout out to the producer that makes us sound good.
Yeah, I think even with that too, just getting back into your element, I think especially with work stuff, you can kind of get to the day to day, right? Like the hustle and bustle. But I do think getting back into why did I do this in the first place? What do I enjoy about this? I do think there's something cool to be said about that. I'm also excited because we're called the A/B testing stream, but some days we have other names. And today I call it the Kelley Show. And you're probably like, Kelley Show, is your middle name Kelley? No, it is not. But we have a really dope colleague, Kelley, and we all think Kelley should have a show too. But in the meantime, you'll have to deal with us just kidnapping Kelley on the A/B testing stream. So let's do it.
Welcome, Kelley.
Hey,
hi, Kelley. And I think we're willing to call it the Kelley Show anytime you want to join. I think the Kelley Show is kind of like a Trump name. It's just it trumps whatever other name we have.
Basically.
Yeah. Hi, Kelley.
I think it would be really great if you started calling it the Kelley Show when I wasn't on the show and just make people really confused.
I see the vision. I kind of like where you're going with this. So Kelley, people are probably like, Kelley, who's Kelley? So just can you introduce yourself to the group?
Yeah, hey everyone. I see some familiar faces in the chat. My name is Kelley with the extra E. I have been at Twilio now for almost 7 years. So I specifically support our account security, user authentication, and identity products. That's what I've been doing my entire time here. So I'm on the evangelism team and I get to help do a lot of technical writing and documentation, blog posts, streams, conference talks, all that fun stuff in service of helping developers like you all use and succeed with our authentication products.
Did you join as a developer evangelist, or did you come into that role later?
No, I've always been in the same role here.
So you've always been I know the name, the account security and authentication name has changed over the years.
Yes,
It's
it
like
has. So when I
Authy,
joined,
Verify.
yeah, Twilio acquired Authy, I want to say in 2015 or 2016. So it was right before I joined. And the Authy acquisition is what all of like our verification APIs grew out of. And so they brought me in because they needed help. There was a lot of emphasis on like, whereas I feel like Twilio early days, like it was big, like self-service, developer first. Let's get started with the messaging API. The Authy APIs are more like, would you like to talk to sales to use this product?
Yeah.
And when we acquired them, they were like, that's not really how we do things at Twilio. So they brought me in to help migrate more to like that self-service vision. And I'd like to think that I helped with that and did a good job. And the products have evolved a lot in the last 7 years. And so even though I've been doing the same thing, like every day is still very different. And security changes a lot. I've learned a lot.
Did you start, like, did you wake up as a young Kelley, being like, security? Like, what was that? Yeah, what was that pathway for you to like be doing this kind of work?
Yeah, I came at it more from like the functional aspect of doing the developer evangelism side of things. So my background, I got a degree from the University of Michigan. Ever heard of it, Alex?
I have heard of it, Kelley. I know, I get excited. Kelley's the one who, whenever I would post like a Go Blue thing, I would get the little like follow-up Go Blue from her.
Yes. There's actually a lot of Michigan people at Twilio, but Alex and I like to bond over that. But so my degree,
I think we're the only ones left on the DevNet.
Oh, are we? Oh yeah,
Gervis was there.
I mean, Jeffy L went to Michigan.
I know, and he's not there either.
I know.
You guys have to represent for
honorary DevNet. The Ohio State.
Yeah, we
won the national championship.
Recently.
It's not
we
even
won the national championship. I was there. I saw it. Flights were delayed. I only saw the last quarter, but I was there for the national championship game.
I mean, normally, like I was in college there when we were like really bad.
Oh, you got the worst because I think you were there right after me, and like early in my college was like 1 versus 2 Michigan Ohio State, like the end of Lloyd Carr's career, and then it just like
lost to Ohio State 3 out of the 4 years I was there, and we lost to Michigan State all 4 years I was there. It was brutal. And so I'm like not used to us being like a good football team anymore.
I mean, I was there. Were you there when we lost to Appalachian State?
No, that was like the year before. I think that was like when I was a senior in high school.
Okay, so I was there for that, and I was like already had it was like I think it was either my junior or senior year, and I already had a job, and so my boss at the job was like felt so bad for me that he's like, let me buy you and all your friends lunch. It was so depressing.
We've already
Appalachian State. Who the heck is that? That is correct. It is a school in West Virginia that
it was like one of those like people love to play Michigan because it's like such an iconic stadium, and so like this first game of the season, it's usually like some no-name school that's like, oh, we get the opportunity to play Michigan, that's really cool.
We pay them
like
a ton
no
of money
one's
too.
really expecting to win that game because Michigan is like has so much money essentially as part of it. But then we got beat by this no-name school in West Virginia.
Awkward. I feel like this is like a clip of watch Americans get excited about
Something
college
that
football.
only Americans care about. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But the way everyone's face lit up, the passion, if there's anything I know, is that Michigan fans are very passionate about their university. Like there are very few truths in this life thing, but Michigan's passion is
Well, it's like passion about the university, and I feel like because Alex, are you from Michigan? You're not, right?
No, I'm not from Michigan, but my dad also went to Michigan, so I grew up a Michigan fan. So I had it growing up. Not all around me like people who grew up in Michigan, because I know you grew up in Michigan, but like, yeah, it was a huge part of my life forever.
Yeah, I feel like this is just like one of those places that like my partner's from Maryland, and he's always like, whenever you meet somebody that like went to Michigan or like is from Michigan, all you talk about is like the Michigan connection. You get so excited, and he's like, no one does that from Maryland. Like, no one's like, oh my gosh, I'm also from Maryland. You don't see that there.
Yeah, as Robertable said, Michigan alums have opinions. And then Sandra, I'm clicking all over here. Sandra said, oh wait, is that where the Star Kids origin was? Yes, so Star Kids actually happened while I was there. The Harry Potter musical. I don't remember which one, but one of my dear friends who I still talk to regularly played either Crab or Goyle. He was the really tall one with the low voice. And like, it was so weird seeing him. I did not see the original Star Kid. No, I feel bad about that. I wish I had. But I was there, and I've met Darren Chris because I've gone to like a lot of the like after Star Kid, after they did the thing in Michigan, my friend was like still involved with them, and they would do other things. So I went to some of their other plays. Like they did a Batman play at one point, and like I met Darren Chris a couple of times just because we were in similar circles. So like I have connections there, but yeah, that's like a funny, weird thing that just like a weird quarter of the internet really loves this like Harry Potter spoof musical that came out.
No, it's so funny because I feel like when you like, yes, people from Michigan will tell you they went to Michigan, right? But like, I feel like people end up like talking about football a lot, but the other thing that they're like really good for is musical theater. If you go to a Broadway show, it'll be like, this person graduated from like, it's like Carnegie Mellon, NYU, and University of Michigan are always the top ones that you'll see on a playbill.
Okay, so you started at Michigan.
Yeah, back to your question.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was like, so while at Michigan, you were making security, security musicals. JK. Okay. But okay. I'm just saying.
Sandra, are you calling us toddlers?
But yes, Kelley is going to dive into our. Yeah, that would be kind of dope though, like a security musical. But anyways, I
want to go back to the question, which was like, you did you do CS at Michigan?
No, I did not. I was in the business school because, like, as you know, Alex, like it was like peak like 2008 financial crisis time. So I was like in college and I was like, I just want a job. Like, I don't have any like ideas about what I want to do with my life, which like does anyone at 18, right? But I got into the business school and I was like, cool, they'll get me a job after I graduate. Yeah. So I did that and I did get a job. I worked in finance after school. I moved to New York City and did listed derivatives trading.
Fun.
And then I did that for about 8-9 months. And I was like, I don't really care about soybean futures. Wow. And then I moved to San Francisco and learned how to code.
That's so funny, Kelley. That was my family business. My family all traded commodities and like futures on the Chicago Stock Exchange. Like, my
CBRE was like,
my grandfather traded pork bellies, my uncle hogs, my mom currencies, and my dad.
My favorite was live cattle, and this is probably like pork and hogs is a thing. Like there are derivatives for cattle, live cattle, and you would have people that would just like trade on the actual securities themselves as a like financial instrument. But then you also had like the beef supplier for McDonald's that was using this to like hedge and make sure that their price for the beef that they were buying to make all these hamburgers would stay consistent. So there was like an entire team that was not my team, but that would deal with the delivery of the live cattle once these futures expired. So that you had somebody at these like major financial institutions whose job was to like coordinate with trucks to send cattle places.
Yeah.
Not what I expected.
It was that. And yeah, I remember hearing a story about how like my grandpa at one point had to like receive a shipment of pork bellies, and he's like, to like find a freezer to put them in. Like, and this is like truckloads. This isn't like, this is like, you need, it was,
I could see why you're like, okay, let's wrap this up. And I just like, the visuals of just like, even just being like, wow, is this my life? Like, no shade to we are inclusive here. We welcome all the traders, but I could see how after a while you're like, is this what the future holds?
Yeah.
I did not think that was what the future holds. So I did one of the like earliest boot camps that was available. So this was back in 2013. I did a programming boot camp, learned Python. The timing was impeccable because this was the time when like there were so many startups in San Francisco, and VCs were just throwing money at anyone that had an idea. And so all these places were like really desperate to hire people. No one really knew what a boot camp was yet. Like I got in before there was like a lot of saturation in the market of like young, inexperienced developers. And so I got in when people were like, cool, you know how to like work in a command line? Great. Like we'll teach you the rest. So I got a job at an education technology startup, learned Scala, which was the programming language that I did a lot with for my first like 6 years of my career. And then from there, I started like speaking at Scala conferences. And that's how I kind of got involved in some of the community stuff, did some teaching. And then I was like, oh, I was doing all of this like teaching, public speaking, conference attending as an extracurricular. And then Twilio was willing to pay me to do that, but they were hiring specifically for evangelists to support the account security stuff. So that's how I kind of weaseled my way in, was through that angle. They were like, okay, you know how to do all the rest of this. You seem like you can learn. And I would like to think I have.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, you've become a true like beacon in that part of our business. And like I would have thought coming in, because you've been here for 7 years, Bianca and I have been here for 2. I thought coming in that you like had a deep security background. I thought that you would like come out of like, you know, like going to going to like, what's the big one in Vegas, DEF CON or whatever, like like that side of security. I was like, oh, Kelley knows her stuff. So like
I have been to DEF CON, but
oh, you have?
I have, yeah.
Good.
But only since I started at Twilio.
Okay. That's real. No, yeah, I think what's been cool about, even you've also made like security relevant, security fun. And when I say relevant in the sense of like, how does this apply to you? I do think a lot of times folks think like security folks are like, I'm in my chambers hacking away. And I'm like, there's so much more to security, even this concept around like identity, right? So I think like, I'm also curious to just even hear, like, when you think about security today, the misconceptions, like what do you wish you could tell the people about security?
Yeah, I mean, like you say that like I know my stuff, and I'd like to think that I do around like the authentication and identity side of it, but security is such a big field and there's so many different parts of it. That was one of the things that I think took me a while to figure out when I first started here, is I was like, okay, I'm going to like go to a security conference, but if I go to a general security conference, there's maybe only like a handful of talks that are about authentication. Which was the case. Like I was at B-Side San Francisco last weekend, and there was like great talks there, but it's about people running like incident response and application security and penetration testing and all these things that are super useful and relevant to some, but not going to be as relevant to some of the work that I do on the authentication side. So I think like the breadth of the industry is a really big thing that I've learned, and that is probably relevant to a lot of folks, like the application development side of things. Like you might not know as much about like people that are working in incident response or something like that. So I think that that's a big part of it. And I think like the other thing, like you mentioned, Bianca, is that there's, I think, this conception about the Mr. Robot like style hackers, right? Like, and that was actually a more accurate portrayal of like security than a lot of.
Yeah, they did a good job of like, because they did a lot of it was social hacking, and that's like, I always thought like being a penetration tester, a pen tester would be like such an interesting gig because half of it's acting. Like you need to like go into a bank and pretend to be the guy there to fix the servers so you can like get access to their thing and plug a USB in. And like, that's the kind of stuff they would do in Mr. Robot, which was so cool. Cause yeah, like 80% of it's, and that's why we get so many, you know, phishing and smishing and all those other kind of attacks, because like the weakest point is people at the end of the day. Like
exactly. Yeah, it's not like I mean, I think there's this like misconception that like you're going to be in a basement, like on a computer trying to, you know, run some program, now probably using AI or whatever, like to get into things. And it's like, it's not how it works. It's you do the acting, like you said. The social engineering side of it is always, or not always, but probably like 98% of the time, the first line of attack to something. And even if like you are using that to then get you information that then you can use in like a more computer based attack, right? So like you'll see this a lot with like account recovery processes are part of one of the like stickier parts of the authentication journey, right? So if you say like, I, you know, forgot my password, how do you reprove your identity there, right? And there's all sorts of ways that different companies will do this. But if your bank is asking you for like your date of birth or your address or your social security number, how do you then like find out and get those pieces of information? And there's like different, you can, you know, lie to companies. Sometimes you don't even need to. And so if you find out that I have an account with like Acme Inc. and then you like call up Acme and get my date of birth for an account that's unrelated, but you actually want to like go hack me on betainc.com, like that's part of the way that like a lot of people
Sandra asked a really great question that I just want to bring up here, which is wait, what's this one? Is security just psychology with code?
Basically, yeah.
Sometimes
there's not even code.
I think that to me is like what's interesting, because it's like, I think you had mentioned even this like people, like the people aspect and even the like other disciplines. So I'm curious kind of, were there things that you took from the finance worlds, you know, like I'm interested to see like how some of those previous experiences even tied into like how you built up your security competencies or things like that.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting thing with this, right? Because we're all exposed to security in all parts of our lives as just humans, whether or not that's internet security or physical security, right? And so I think there's those trade-offs that you have to consider. And I think like everything in engineering, it's all about trade-offs, but so much of security is like building up enough of a barrier that it's going to make it annoying for people to like get through that barrier, but it'll be easy for the people that are intended to get through that barrier like to get through, right? And so like locks and keys is, you know, on your house is the example of that, right? But like then, you know, there's other, you can extend that to like if you are somebody that's more security conscious, then you might have like a security system in your house or that kind of thing. Maybe you add a deadbolt instead of just like one key, right? And so like you start to see how you layer these things in your everyday life and how that might then affect you know, like the internet security and the digital security that we think about as developers. And so I think that's part of the way that I've thought about it too, is just like how this applies in my everyday life.
Interesting. I like this, even this aspect of like asking, like what questions are you asking to? So I'm gonna like give you a scenario, right? So I was recently so sometimes I'll do hotels, sometimes I'll do Airbnbs, but like when I was trying to use the code like on the lock, they put up 2 numbers, but you don't get the keypad on initially, right? But there's like a barrier, but it's like the person who's trying to get into the house, they're going to keep on like, they're going to find the solution or they're going to talk to someone. But even this aspect of like, if you're supposed to be here, you'll find a way to get in. And even this
Yeah.
concept of just like the questions that you're asking of just like, I might be irritated. I was irritated, but I was like, I need to get into the place that I am staying, like that I need to stay at.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
I
then
don't
like thinking about the way that like those protections are done, right? Like if what is the motivation of somebody getting into that house, right? If you're trying to get in so that you can sleep there, like you're probably going to go through a different set of attempts than somebody that's trying to like
yeah,
rob the place, right? Like
good point.
you're probably not going to like break a window to get into the house.
Good point. Good point.
There's that great XKCD that's like, oh no, we can't get in. It's like encrypted with 4096-bit RSA encryption, and then somebody like hands a wrench over, and it's like, now just like attack the person to make them give you the password. And it's I think that's the other psychology part of it is I gotta like find this meme, but that like technology is not always the answer.
Yeah.
Speaking of security, I actually use XKCD for security. I use XKCD's password generator all the time when I need like a big password for something, because they'll just give you random words that you mush together. And so like instead of it being like a bunch of random numbers and letters, it's like rainbow, sky, car, tulip. And like that's easier to remember.
Not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's not the direction you're going with. Okay.
No.
Yeah, it's XKCD 538 if you want to look for that. Okay. I sent Brent the link so that he can paste it in the chat. But
cool. No, yeah, I really
spring 2024 is not a good password right now.
It's not the vision. The Kelley show is not a good one either. Okay, great. All right, now we know. But yeah, I think this whole question thing, but I think even with this aspect of like the questions that you're asking around security, around the journey, like, are there questions you're like, wow, I never would have thought someone goes this pathway down in like security? But I guess maybe my actual question is just like, you're having to predict a lot around human behavior, but humans are very unpredictable people. So I think like, are there decision trees that you think of as a person in security, like when you're kind of thinking up these questions, right? Around like, what is this issue that this person's trying to solve? If someone's trying to get into a home, if someone's trying to get into their account, what's the user journey? But I guess, yeah, I'm wondering if there are any frameworks that you like to kind of leverage or think through.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always like, especially with the authentication side of stuff, there's always the fallback that you have to think about. There's always the account recovery that you have to think about. And so I think that's part of it is like, yeah, you could. So like an example of this would be like, if you wanted to add really good security to your online bank, one thing that the bank could do is that in order for you to get into your bank every time, they could require that you like come to a physical branch and like present some kind of like key with like your fingerprint and like be in the branch and then do a retina scan. Like they could do that. That would be really secure, right? If they like wanted to require all of that, but that's like not feasible. That's not practical. And so I think there's like all of these trade-offs that you have to consider with like the ease of use and the user experience side of things. And that's one of the things that like as security people, sometimes we get a little frustrated because we might be like fighting with like the growth team that wants to improve signups, or like, but then if we're like, oh, but we needed to do like identity verification before somebody signs up for this, and this is where like regulation comes in, right? Is regulatory boards will be like, no, you need to like prove certain things before someone can open like a crypto vault or something like that, right? Whereas like a crypto company might want to prioritize the sign up side of that. You need to find that balance. And so I think that's where like you need to figure out like how much are people willing, like what hoops are people willing to jump through in order to do some of this stuff, versus like what are your goals with like the security side of things too. I was having a really interesting conversation with somebody about this last week about like voice identity matching. And so like if you can do something where you're like, oh, like a lot of banks do this now of like, can you like recognize my voice and actually use that as a security tool? And there's all sorts of ways that you can like clone a voice and break through that system. Like voice biometrics are not exactly the most secure thing, but it turns out that if you do that and you don't require somebody to then like have a secret phrase or have
Mhm.
some other kind of backup, like that's faster. And so certain organizations have made that trade-off of saying, hey, like this is something that's like worth it for us because we end up saving money
Yeah.
on our contact center.
Yeah,
How do you trust this with AI voice cloning? You don't.
Yeah, I don't know. And also, like, there is currently hours and hours and hours of Bianca and I on.
Don't tell the
Exactly.
internet,
Like,
Alex.
the
that was
internet
like
knows it's on
the
the internet.
person
You're
giving this
telling-
talk was like, this talk is being recorded, and now there are
Right.
like copies of my voice that people
Yeah.
can use to create a copy of.
Yeah. I don't. Bride Evie said something funny, which is like rapid DNA testing. Want to log in? Please swab your cheek with this Q-tip and shove it into your laptop. You know, maybe one day.
Yeah.
Why am I thinking of like the future of like, no, oh my gosh, like Apple being like, hey, look at our new attachments. Like literally our security. Oh my gosh, that is a little scary. I will say, I will look at the day that like, watch, we'll have like these kits that connects, and then we'll be like, wow, Alex, you said this on stream 11 of the Kelley Show.
Recorded. Welcome.
It is. It is. Yeah.
New
The new-
Apple dongle rapid test swab.
No, it's so interesting though, even this aspect of like, what do you pair something with? In terms of just like, you're like, hey, if you were to do voice, you might need something to reinforce it. So even that aspect of just like, how do you pair those two things? But what even comes to mind to me is just like, security is also like a business challenge. And I think people just see it as like, okay, this is just tech. But it's like, no. There are literally business implications of if people can't access their accounts, if they can't access their money, or if their money continues to get drained. I definitely think a lot about this, even for, the aging population, right? Like there are unique security things. My rule of thumb for my mom is just like, don't answer it. If it's not me, verify, call, check in. Like, I was just like, anyone asks you for money, say no. And I think especially like one of the things I've definitely learned is like, oh shoot, we have, okay, Corey. It's a party. But yeah, I think like, oh gosh, we have the whole crew. But yeah, so I think like even for aging parents, right? Like this aspect of what are the considerations? What is their security logic? Because my security logic isn't like, hey, someone asked me for money, give it to them. But they're like, wow, but they're hungry and I want to help out. And I was like, no, but not with your bank account over the phone. Like, so I think that like security with like aging populations, immigrant populations, I think I'm like, it'll be interesting to even see like the evolution of that too,
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like part of are y'all familiar with Stir Shaken and like what that is adding?
No.
So if you look at your call log recently and you see calls from people that you might notice that there's like a little check mark next to some of the names. But if there's some that came in with like spam risk or something like that, they don't have that check mark. And basically this is one of the ways that the telephony industry in the United States specifically, they're thinking about it internationally, but it hasn't gotten as widespread yet, is trying to actually verify end-to-end calling in terms of like making sure that somebody who called you is not spoofing the phone number that it came from. And so this is one way to help make sure that like you're, limiting the amount of like spam calls that we get. Of course, you don't have to like spoof a number for it to be a spam call, but
yeah, I will say though, like, it's kind of interesting this time period of like, everyone's so skeptical. I think we went from this hyper trust economy to like skeptical, like a very skeptical economy that like folks are just like what are you doing? Why are you using this? You used to type with all caps and now you use like lowercase. I can't trust you. And so then it's just like, whoa, like how do you design systems, in that context where people are very like skeptical?
Yeah. Depro mentioned zero trust. Like, yeah, I was at RSA last week, and I mean, now everything is like AI in the age of security.
Mhm.
I heard some like terrible buzzwords just walking through the vendor hall of like, we're introducing synergies with AI, but like, the zero trust is the other thing of like, that basically means that at any interaction that you have, like, you're not trusted until there's like some verification that
Right.
happens. And that's, whether that's logging in, changing some account detail, and
Mhm.
that isn't always necessarily like on the end user to do that verification, but
Yeah.
sometimes that's happening in the back end of verifying like IP addresses or session details or things like that. Yeah, Corey knows all about this.
Yeah. The
Yeah, there
zero.
was some when we were starting to do some of the silent network auth stuff, that was cool too. Where it's like
Yeah.
it knows if it's coming from your actual phone.
Mhm.
There's definitely some things in the back end that I think are gonna make this feel a lot more seamless when we can do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I know you're starting to do some stuff with passkeys, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I think this is like ties into what we were talking about too, of like the trade-offs that people make in terms of authentication choices. Like SMS 2FA is one of those. There's a lot of people that think it's terrible, right? But like the reason it's so popular is so many people can easily receive an SMS. And so as a step up from just using passwords, it's actually like a really solid option because it's very user friendly and
Mhm.
it provides an additional layer of security. Of course, it has its issues though, right? And so that's where something like passkeys is starting to come in, that's hopefully going to be as user friendly, but then provide like a different level of security that isn't as phishable as something like 2FA over SMS.
Mhm. It's so interesting because so many people, they're like, they know Twilio for like SMS. And you're like, but wait, there's more. And I feel like having to let people know, hey, like the industry has evolved. And I do wonder, like, like how are companies keeping up, right? To see the evolution of security. Like, yes, there's industry specific things that people might go to, but like if everyone in business is like, text messages, like I wonder like where do they go, if they want to understand the latest and greatest? And
I mean, the Twilio blog, right?
boom, we
Yeah.
didn't prep that. I no, but for I didn't prep that. So,
No, like Corey mentioned in the chat, right? Like the UX around passkeys has a way to go, but seeing wider adoption is fantastic. And like, he has a really good point there that there's, passkeys is, for all intents and purposes, a rebranding of WebAuthn. So there is, WebAuthn has been around for a few years. It uses public key cryptography, which sounds really like impressive, but what it does is it ties individual logins and individual keys to individual websites. And so that's part of why it makes it phishing resistant, which is really good. And then the passkeys invention on top of that is basically that then you'll have a little bit of account recovery built in because these are backed up to your password manager or some kind of passkey provider, like 1Password, like Chrome, or like your iCloud keychain or something like that. Oh, how convenient. There's a Passkeys 101 blog post that
wow, who knew?
wonder who wrote that. But yeah, so it's like hopefully going to be something that will make it a little bit easier for people to use, because previously WebAuthn is like this really secure, nice idea in theory, but it's something that like you needed a YubiKey or some kind of specific hardware to use. And like Twilio, like all Twilio employees have YubiKeys, but that's because we're employees, right? And Twilio has our addresses and can send us these YubiKeys, right? But like for me trying to like, if you're on some website like Domino's Pizza or something, they're gonna like send everybody a YubiKey just to like order pizza, right? The trade-off there doesn't make as much sense. So now
unless it
there's
was like really automatic. Like if it was just like a button push and a pizza showed up, I think they'd do that if they haven't already. I feel like that was a thing at one point. But.
Yes.
I just
That would be
literally
really
just
good.
all I just had is just like, you know how they put your utensils in like for some restaurants. I just imagine like, oh, and get your key. Just like spoon
It would
fork.
be
You
great if they would like shape it like a piece of pizza too. There was
I'm
like
just saying.
the fingerprint reader was like a little slice of pepperoni.
We're
Pizza key. Listen, if
I'm
anyone
just
from
saying.
Domino's is watching,
I'm just saying
we have an idea.
I think we have friends there. So you stay tuned, people. But yeah, no, back to you. Back to you.
But yeah, now like there's more like there's these readers that are built into like the devices we already have. So like you can use the biometrics on your iPhone or Android device to do the same kind of thing that a YubiKey used to be required to do. And same with a lot of computers too. So you no longer need these special devices, and that's where I think like they're becoming more user friendly. There's still like work to be done in terms of rollout, and I think like the account recovery question is still an issue, right? Because the nice thing about passkeys is you can register multiple devices for the same account, but somebody was pointing out to me recently, and this is like, I felt really old when they were telling me about this. They were like, yeah, but like youths these days don't have more than one device. They only have a phone. They don't also have a laptop. And I was like, is that true? I guess. But that's like, there's, I think all these assumptions being made that like you can register a passkey on your phone, and then you can register one on your computer. And then if you lose your phone or just like upgrade your phone, you have like a backup device there that you can use. But what happens if that's not the case?
Well, or are the passkeys also like, I have like, if I have a password manager, if I just like log into that password manager on a new device, does it pull the passkeys over, or do you need a
it will if you've saved the passkeys to the password manager. But I think that's like one of the problems right now with some of the UX, and like Corey can chime in with things about like what he meant about the UX here, but like it's not always clear where you're saving the passkey. Like the UX will like show you where you're saving the passkey, but then like the way that password managers have to hijack the browser sessions to do this makes it so that then sometimes that's not clear. I'm not doing a great job of explaining this. No, but like basically,
so you sounded convincing, but so
I had to turn it off. I had to turn passkeys off in my password manager because like it would hijack my YubiKey. And then it was like an extra click or two to actually be able to use my YubiKey or my fingerprint reader because it was in my thing. And like that's very real, and it was kind of a pain. I saw a talk from the product manager for passkeys at 1Password last week, and he was like complaining about this, and basically there's like talk of like whether or not the Chrome browser, like some of these other like browsers, can open up an API specifically for password manager developers so that they can detect this without having to like do that kind of like session hacking situation that is currently being used. So that's something that is like a little bit outside of the scope of the work of things I do, but really interesting to see that like those conversations are happening. It's tangential. I mean, it's as tangential as like when we like see that crazy AI demo and it's like a voice demo, and it's like, okay, how does that affect Twilio? It's like, well, you could maybe hook it up to a phone call. I mean, but it's like, doesn't, but it's still tangential. It's still a part of the, and like you being in the security world are thinking about all these things, which is really cool that you're, so plugged into it. And I'm glad that you've been able to find a little bit of a passion for it, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, I can actually like, I could just show like.
Do you have a demo for us?
I do, yeah.
Do you have, oh shoot. I will say what's interesting though is just like, one thing I've been thinking about is just like the physical versus the digital. And I think like when you have like that extra layer, whether it's like your phone or something else, like something that people can touch. So I think that balance between like the hardware and just like everything living on digital, like I wonder how folks are even thinking about that, like, in the space. Like,
yeah, I mean, that's like one of the like questions, right? About like whether or not you're going to go all in on like saving your passkeys to your password manager versus like what do we do about like the kind of redundancy and backup stuff?
Even for a lot of people that transition to a password manager is a new one that they're like figuring out because it was
Yeah.
always on their phone or in Chrome. It's like, well, is that where you want it? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I was like, so Fido, who is the Fast Identity Online, they're the people that are like organizing all of the like passkey stuff. They released this like UI kit last year in Figma. And so like you can kind of see some of the stuff that they're recommending in terms of how, like, this is all open source, anyone could look at it. But where's the content? I was gonna like show something here of
we also have some good continue doing your thing. It's interesting, there's a question in chat around like heirs to estates. Like that's something that like I had to think a lot about, and I was like, I shouldn't tell the internet this, but I am. But like I had to kind of I knew a lot of my dad's like logins and passwords, but like it was a challenge of just like, I don't know that like, you know, my random immigrant parent is thinking about the digital processes, right? Like in life and death, right?
Yeah, no, LastPass, the password manager, actually has like a handoff for these situations. 1Password, to my knowledge, still has not built this, and it's really frustrating. Like, I really wish that they would do that. But like, yeah, the digital estate management is like a really interesting challenge that I think is going to continue to only be like a bigger issue.
Yeah, especially if they're relying on like a lot of these like, they're relying on the phones, but then what happens? So for instance, like I've still kind of kept, it's costly, but like I've still kept my dad's phone line for like a year or two, because I'm like, well, if something needs to kind of two-factor, like all these things. And it's like, it shouldn't be like that. But I'm like, but if someone else has the number, then what happens there? So even just like that, the telecom, you know, it's just a lot. But I do think there's probably more simplified ways, and even like, how can we better answer some of these questions? Definitely.
It's interesting to hear you from that side too, because for me, it's like the other side of it, which is like in my family, I have all the logins for bank accounts and all that stuff. Like I just take care of it because my wife doesn't want to, and good for her. But like, what happens if something happens to me? Like that's such a hard thing.
I will actually, I'm trying to remember what this was called, but I did this process last fall in terms of like doing a lot of like digital like handoff stuff, just like in case something does happen. I can share that when I find it, but there's like some organizations. There's some organizations that have like thought about this and like will basically make it some step-by-step steps for you to think about, you know, like estate management from the digital perspective, which is, you know, it's depressing, but you know, if you want to make it useful for people, is more than just having a will is useful these days.
Kelley, we have a question from Sandra in chat. Do you think there's an explain like I'm 5 definition possible for passkeys, or is it just oddly nuanced in between things that these are things that prohibit that?
No, there is an explain like I'm 5. I don't know if I have a good explain like I'm 5. We could ask ChatGPT for that. I think I did actually once do that, and I didn't like the answer, but. So a passkey is so every passkey has 2 parts. So there's a public key and a private key. Public keys are, you know, they're able to be shared. There's no risk in other people seeing those. But the private key, so a public key is almost kind of like the lock that you might like put a key into, where it's like anybody can have access to that, but you need that to also interface with a private key, which would be like the actual like physical key side of things, in order to then make sure that both are being used to secure something. The innovation with passkeys is essentially that the lock and the key pair that you're using for this is only ever going to be good for a specific site. So I was going to like show this demo that I did, and so you can all like see this if you go to Twilio verify passkeys demo.vercel.app. I'm registering as Bianca, so you can see this is what I was talking about. I was like, I have 1Password here, but it's like if I don't want to save this to 1Password, I have to like exit out of this before it'll let me do this with my Chrome browser. And so a passkey has these two parts. One that's being saved, the private key is being saved to this Chrome browser or 1Password. And then there's like a public key. So yeah, again, like my 1Password is popping up here, and it's just like kind of annoying. So we need to figure that out as an industry. The passkey is popping up, and so it has interesting details about like so here's a public key that's being shown here, and that's what then from like the perspective, this is not an explain like I'm 5. I'm doing a terrible job of this right now. But this is where like this is being saved to the Twilio side of things for like our passkeys API, and then the private key, this is like not something that is being shown anywhere right now, and that's because that's like the actual secret part of this that is being saved in this case to my Chrome browser. So sorry, Bianca, I hijacked your name.
Roberto, explain like I have a PhD.
Yes, I'm gonna use that. Forget 5. Forget being 5. We have graduated, all the.
I think your lock and key explanation, where it's like it reminded me, excuse me, a little bit of like there's a username and a password.
Yeah.
Like the public key is a little bit like your username or like the lock. And
then, yeah, exactly. Like the username is another like good example for that. No, I mean, I feel like for the people that are watching this stream, like hopefully this blog post was not like intended to be like an explain like I'm 5, but it was intended to be like an explain like I've been working in tech.
Not in security,
but maybe not familiar with like passkeys specifically. So I'm just like trying to remember what I actually wrote here. Standardized form of passwordless authentication. So yeah, the passwordless is like a big part of this. Like people want to remove passwords from the equation because passwords are insecure for a myriad of reasons. So yeah, they use a browser API, and so these are things that are like built into the browser itself. So you can actually like see this if you open up Chrome. There's like this navigation API, and so like anyone can do this. So if you say like this will why is
so you're basically asynchronously creating credentials.
Yeah, what is
did you spell create right?
Yeah,
undefined reading property reading create.
Let me just like look at my code.
There you go.
A little helpful.
You got it working once somewhere.
Yeah, I did, didn't I? I mean, this is like the navigator credentials create. It's almost like I've looked at the Mozilla docs for this before.
I like how they're all purple too. You've clicked on all these before.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting good use.
Navigator. I wrote navigation.
Sometimes if I like have a question and I've like asked it a bunch of times, I just like look for the ones that I've already clicked on, being like, that's it. That's what I need.
I'm like, you guys can hear me, right?
Sweet. So
I'm back.
Oh my gosh. So I need options first? I need options first. Yes, here's some options. I've clearly made this request before. So this is the interesting thing. So RP, relying party. This is like the business or the website that you're doing this for. And so this is required when you create a passkey, because then this is like probably not going to work when I do this because I'm not on I'm on vercel.app. I'm not on twilio.com. But so you see it's encountered a problem, and that's because this like browser API says the relying party ID is not a registrable domain equal to the current domain. But then if I like go over and try to do that on twilio.com, it would work because
which is it just shows you a little bit of the security, like it's looking where you're getting this from.
Yeah, so like I can, I could save this. I'm not going to. Why not? Because then you can like see information. So there's a passkey saved here. But then you might be like, oh, well, you just like created a passkey. Like, if I wanted to change this to like Bianca, Bianca, I'm just like stealing all of your identity right now.
On stream too. On stream at that. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So like I could go ahead and do this. And like if I wanted to save a passkey to Twilio, now I've got this like passkey saved, and you're like, oh my gosh, how is that like possible? But like Twilio also has to be involved with this process, right? Like
Right, you were just like creating something in theory as if it was Twilio.
Yes, exactly.
Twilio's not recording that anymore. Twilio's not using that.
Yeah. And so that's where like then like the actual like backend side of this is what now we're introducing into the Verify API that we use to do that like registration. And so when I created this here, we create like a verification factor on the backend that then is stored for the specific website that you're using in order to have that kind of interplay between the server side and the client side that you're working with.
Nice. Is this out yet? Are people using this?
This is in pilot right now.
Okay.
So you can, where is the link to stuff? We had a link to sign up.
In your, is this, no, this is in the, yeah, that's in your blog.
Yeah, this is in the blog post. So
yeah, if you go there, you can, if anyone wants to sign up, you can go to that Passkeys blog post.
Yes, I need to add a link to this on that application.
So Robertables asked, Passkeys is usable. Twilio's passkey is in pilot. Am I getting that right? So
yes, passkeys is like a general technology concept. Is live. It's usable. The thing that you would have to do right now is, so like there's the client side of it that I was like showing in the console here, the navigator credentials create side of things. But then there's also the like server side, and the server side you could either like roll your own, but then you have to do like all of the public key management side of things there, or that's where you can use like a relying party as a service is what I've heard they're being called now in terms of like what we're offering from the API side of things to do all of that passkey management for you. And the reason that we're introducing this is both because we think it's like a useful service, and because even with passkeys as a product, like you're still probably going to need backup authentication options, and that's where we can come in to like add like the SMS 2FA as a backup, or push authentication, TOTP, what have you.
We got a lot of people in chat being like, what was it? It was roll your own security server. I dare you.
Yeah.
So
the drama.
Yeah, that stuff's real. Like there's certain things that just like somebody's going to do a better job than you. I'm not going to go make my own password manager. I feel like it's that way for 2FA a little bit, where like it's a lot easier to use Verify than it is to build it yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's like, it's certainly possible, but this is all so new at this point that like there's not as much support out there. There's not as much like open source libraries for doing this kind of stuff as there is for other security options. So, it's something that if you're thinking about doing this, like I would do some research and come talk to us.
I started my career working in data centers, and it was kind of that same vibe where it's like, there's so much that goes into the thought process of like, just physically, how do you like cool and power these servers? But then also like, how do you stop people from getting in? Like that was when I first had my, retinal scanners were like a thing. And they were like these crazy, like that we had this device where you'd step into this, like, they didn't want anyone to follow you. So you'd use your badge. It would this like tube would open up. You'd walk into the middle of the tube. It would close. It could sense if there were two people in there, would scan your eyes, and then it would like let you through the other side. It was like,
oh my gosh,
you couldn't. So like there was no way to get into this into the physical server environment without that. And it was one of those things where like most people have it in a closet somewhere.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe there's something better that somebody
that
else
was
is
like,
gonna build.
So I like just built this like sample application, right? That like had all of these passkeys working on it. I wasn't paying attention to the chat, but like, did anybody copy the link into the chat? Because I think you all can play around with this if you want.
Which link do you want copied in?
The like
We'll scroll
passkeys
down.
demo.
Let's see.
Okay.
We had some action. We had some action in chat.
There is some action. I don't know if we got the passkeys demo in there, but if you drop it to
I
one
will
of us,
send
we'll
it
get in.
to Brent. But yeah, so you can play around with this. But it's funny because like when I was talking to the product manager about this, when we were originally like talking about like building out this API, I was like, okay, I totally get like why the backend is useful, like doing all of the like the public key management. But like you saw, like it's one line for me to write navigator credentials create in the browser. Like why would we then also introduce like a browser, like a client side plugin for this? Like who needs that? It's so easy. And then I started building this and I was like, oh my god, there's a million edge cases, holy shit. And like,
oh yeah,
it's just one of those things that like is, until you start building with it, you're like, oh, like it can't be that hard, can it? And even something like this, that like so much thought has been going into this from the community about how to make the user experience good for this, it's still there's complications.
I like that. Robertable's oops all edge cases. Yeah, like
we're designing all the merch as we speak.
Yeah.
Security
like
merch.
Maybe that's an A/B testing one. Oops, all like A/B testing. Oops, all edge cases. Yeah, as Sandra put it, all edge cases, things you want and brownies, but not at work.
I mean, I'm actually like part of one of the hardest things when I was first building this is oh yeah, we're not looking at my screen anymore. But one of the hardest things was that navigator credentials create method. It returns some like binary type code. So what is?
We could probably put you back on.
Yeah, if you want to get back on.
I can do that. I know how to share my screen.
Hey,
don't I? This is not you, Bianca. This is me trying to figure out and remember how.
I feel like that's Dev Evangelism 101, how to share your screen well.
Yeah, exactly.
It should be a part of the onboarding.
It is. So at Twilio, one of the interviews that you have to do to be an evangelist is you have to give a demo. They're like, give a demo on something not Twilio. I don't know if you had that 7 years ago when you were hired, Kelley.
I did, yeah.
I definitely did.
I gave one. What did I do my demo on? I did like a word count application using Spark. Nice. So I was doing a lot of like data engineering then.
Oh, cool.
Twins, y'all were twinsies.
Yeah.
all the things. It's funny.
I did one with Ross, because if you make robots move, even in simulation, it impresses everybody. That was
nice. Fun. Okay, so like you can see this here. So I created this passkey like for on Twilio.com, and
we've got some other Twilio people. Someone gave a demo on Tailwind CSS.
Oh, nice.
We're waiting for Corey to figure out who he was. Yeah, any Twilians that are joining us, we'd love to hear what your demo was. What I'm talking for demo is the interview to get hired.
Yeah,
like, there was for me, it was like do a demo on something not Twilio was one of the interviews that a bunch of people sat in on.
Yeah, I remember specifically. I got a hot tip from a friend of mine that was like, what they want to see is that you're like cool under pressure and that you can recover if there's mistakes. So I built in intentionally making a mistake into my demo so that then I could fix it.
That's amazing.
So smart. But wait, there's a mistake. Wow.
Oh no, what? Oh, didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
I can fix it. That's right.
But I mean, it's I've definitely like messed up plenty of demos. in my days at Twilio. So it actually, it's useful. But
I
the point
have-
being, now that I've successfully shared my screen again, so like part of the problem is like this like built-in function here returns an array buffer as part of the information, and you need to send this array buffer to a server. And you can't exactly send array buffers to servers, but then if I try to like actually extract that raw ID to send it to like the Twilio API, for example, you can't do that. So you need to do all of this like manipulation in here. And there's like a GitHub library that they will do that with. So GitHub passkeys library. Where's the one that I was looking for? WebAuthn.
Another. I love how everyone's dropping like their demos.
Yeah,
it's kind of great.
fun,
I was like, I wonder
this
if
one.
we had. Okay.
So this is like allows you to then replace these calls. And this is where it's like, this is all so new still, is eventually this is going to be built into the browser, but this is an example of one edge case that you're going to get caught on real quick if you start to implement passkeys, is the serialization of these array buffers, which is not something I thought I would be dealing with.
On your end. Like there's a lot of other things that go into it too.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing again. Yeah. I can go back to it if we need. I'm confident in my abilities now.
I believe in you. No, I feel like one stream we could probably run it back to be like, everyone build what you built when you joined.
I don't know if I still could.
Okay.
I don't know if I still could either.
I don't know if I still could. I actually got asked recently by some people I used to work with to like be to like go give a talk at CPPCon, and I was like, I haven't coded in C++ now in 2 years. Like, what am I going to go do? Like, I'm not going to teach C++ people anything. Like, I could give a talk on how to give a talk, but like, that's
give a talk on how to run a screen.
Well, I almost thought of that. So for Denver Startup Week, somebody did a live coding demo of like spinning up an AI Vercel app, which was like a great thing, except half of their talk was them waiting for the Vercel app to build and download. I was like, okay, maybe I just need to give a talk about how to give a good technical demo. Like that's one thing that I feel really lucky for, is that Twilio, we're really good at it. We're really good at giving demos. And like, I'm glad that was a part of the hiring process, because you need to see the raw material and the people that we're hiring and then build up from there. But yeah, like tips, always have a branch in your Git repo that's working just in case you need to switch over. That's a good one. Yeah.
Or my favorite is having a video of your demo just in case.
Somebody just said that. Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
Oh yeah, have a video. Revertables. We're on the same wavelength.
I love how it's just like, oh, that's no longer me on your screen. It's just, just a hybrid.
Well, you could get a video of the screen share and just pretend that's actually your screen share and talk.
Yeah. You're like, wow, don't you see? No, that's so funny. All right. So Chef Brent's like, I'm not sure I could build the exact demo, but could build something similar. But we had done a previous stream where it's like, we ran it back on old blog posts, and we tried to build them. Some worked better than others. So I do think like that might be interesting, of just like running it back. How would you modernize, your old demo?
I'll tell you why I can't run my demo is I don't have a working Linux VM anywhere. I don't need it. But ROS, Robot Operating System, basically only runs in Linux.
Okay. I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't even remember some of the technology that I was using.
That was a long time ago. 7 years is like where was the internet 7 years ago? I don't even know.
Like,
was it still Ruby on Rails? Was Ruby on Rails still a thing? I think by 7 years ago,
Ruby was still a
JavaScript
thing.
To take it. Okay.
Ruby was still a thing. The place I was working was using a lot of Ruby. What was the ad? I was working in ad tech, and I can't remember these ad tech things. What was the ad tech thing that happened like 4 years ago or 6 years ago? Where you have to click the accept or deny every time now. My
Oh,
brain
Oh,
is
that
broken.
wasn't that long ago. Wasn't that with GDPR?
GDPR.
GDPR was not a thing yet.
Yeah.
No.
I got out of ad tech before like GDPR was a thing.
Good for you.
Yeah, Cookie Apocalypse. Clearly, Revertable's side gig is gonna be like swag creative director.
Yeah.
Cookie Apocalypse. We
Yeah.
had some
AI was still called machine learning.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I did a lot of stuff with that because
Yeah.
there's a lot of robotic stuff and image stuff that was ML. And it was like
Yeah.
if a problem was sticky and you couldn't quite discreetly program it out, if you just threw a bunch of data at it, it would solve it. But
Like but it's so wild though how quickly things change, and it's like new issues, old things become new, and it's like how quickly technology is moving even now. I mean, like I'm curious to even think about like what do you think is on the cusp like for the next 7 years? Like where do you even see things going?
I mean, I think this is the funny thing too, like talking about passkeys is I start that blog post out by being like, people have been saying we're going to get rid of passwords, and they've been saying it for like 15 years. And now people are like, oh, but now's the time. Now we're really going to do it. And like, I think we're closer than we have been, but is it going to happen? I don't know.
It is. I feel like it's one of those things of just like the touch and feel, like the touch and feel of a password. And I think it's just like there's also the cultural aspect of just like, well, what do you mean we don't have passwords? And I think even the psychology of knowing I don't have a password.
Yeah.
But I do think like we've done a lot of things that we wouldn't typically do before.
Well, like Alex was talking about like the silent network authentication stuff that we have. And I think that all happens in the background, right? And so like the user never even sees it happen and doesn't interact with it, which is great for speed. But part of that, the challenge there is how do you make the user feel like they're doing authentication and feel like the process is still secure? You still have to think about like the user wants to feel like they did a thing to know that they're not going to be able to get hacked even.
And what's going to happen when AI agents are out there and you have AI going and booking your airplane ticket for you or going and doing something in banking for you? Like,
yeah,
that there's a whole nother layer of authentication where it's like, well, there's probably some things you want your AI to be able to do, but not everything, right? Like maybe it's within a certain balance they can make charges. I don't.
Yeah.
Dom had a great presentation at one point about like how like AI is like a toddler. And like, I understand, like I have to have like some of my cabinets in my kitchen because I have a 1.5-year-old have locks on them and others don't. And so like, it's like that with APIs. Like there's some things I'm going to want my AI to be able to do. And there's other things I definitely don't want them to get into. But like, that's going to be a whole other level of authentication we're going to need to be thinking about pretty soon too.
It's also like, how many things do you let like, I'm just thinking about like a kid cutting a cake with like a butter knife versus a real super sharp knife. So it's like, you could do this with my supervision, and like, what do I allow you to do like just without? And what am I okay with? Like, I mean, if you drain my accounts for like X number of dollars versus like, if you drain my like investment accounts, these might be two different conversations, right? So it's like, yeah. So it's kind of like even that aspect. But I do think there are models though of like entrusting someone else with like access. I think Airbnbs are one example, executive assistants, right? So it's like there's kind of models of like how can we share, but then maybe you put it through like an AI boot camp, right? Like, like, if we're dreaming up the future, right? Like, I'm just like, hey, my AI has went through rigorous training, to make sure that they're not stealing my money.
Well, yeah, like Steven in the chat was talking about restricted API keys is like an example of this. And so I think this is where like it becomes not just an authentication question, but an authorization question. Like, what is somebody allowed to do even if they are authenticated? And there's all sorts of vendors that will sell you their solutions for this.
Yeah. No, that's real. I like how you reframe the questions too, which is like you said, it's like authentication versus authorization, or just kind of even knowing the branches within. And I do think we started the conversation earlier with like security is so vast and there are different questions you're asking, there are different solutions you're looking for.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty helpful.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the like explain like I'm five version of this, right, is like a Google Doc. Like some people have read only access, some people have comment only access, some people have edit access, and so you're going to start seeing probably, you know, like Corey saying, they're talking a lot about this now over at Auth0, and that's part of it too. Is like it goes back to the zero trust also of like maybe you have access to read all of this, but then once you start to try to edit it, then we're going to like start from scratch again and be like, okay, we need to like validate that you are who you say you are and have the correct authorization to be doing this.
I mean,
yeah, Corey, don't you mean Okta?
Yeah, even that is like could create a better experience if you only like. It'd be nice if we were only needed to be authenticated for the thing that we needed.
Yeah,
like. How much authentication do I need from like to get my balance on a bank account? Not as much as I need to, or like make a deposit, quite frankly, versus how much do I need to like actually make a withdrawal or a transfer? Like those are different things, but they treat them kind of all as the same. But yeah, it'd be kind of, it'd be nice if there was like, even if it was zero trust, if there was like a gradual like, hey, you can do X, Y, and Z just from calling.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that like even Twilio is working on right now, with some of like our own controls with when you have a Twilio account, in terms of like, oh, you might not need to do as much like KYC, like identity verification when you first sign up for an account, but then if you want to go buy a phone number, then you have to like have additional verification. And so I think we're still working on figuring out like, is it fine for you to like, what is the set of things that it's okay for you to do with like, you know, providing us a username or a verified email address, and then once you verify a phone number like that, then you have access to do a few more things. Then once you verify a business profile, you have access to do more things and that kind of stuff.
I like the I feel like banks what is it? Banks do a good job. I feel like, what is it? I've seen this from Discover. Like Discover, they'll limit certain account features. Like you could still do the basics, but they're like, oh, there's some things you can't do until after 90 days, right? This like time-based version. So I've definitely noticed kind of different things like that. But I feel like financial services has definitely had to be very mindful. Are there other industries that you feel like do a good job around just like
yeah, I think fintech is a big one. Healthcare is another one where you see a lot of these controls. I think social media also is a place where you start to see a lot of these controls coming into. But yeah, it tends to correlate with the higher risk industries have higher levels of control and that kind
Isn't
of thing.
it weird that now social media is like one of those higher risk industries? Like it used to just be like, who cared? And then there was a check mark.
But then when you can affect the stock markets with a tweet, like
how quickly things change. But even this thing around like social media profiles, but even social media profiles became tools that people use to authenticate things, right? So even that aspect of just like, I saw what you post and like, you know, like that's connected. And it's like, so it's kind of wild to just see how much social media has kind of risen to the forefront of just like, this is now a tool. And the security features, I know that there's some stuff even around like parents wanting to kind of like have access. But then even that aspect, right? Like there's even like the legal of just like, well, if your child's under 18, how much do you get into their account? How does that transfer over? It's just like,
I mean, it goes back to like identity verification too, right? Like none of these social media accounts are supposed to let users create an account if they're under the age of 13, but how do you verify that? I don't have the answer, but they're supposed to.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like some things, like old things are new, right? Like the kid that went into the store and you're like, you're not 21, but your ID says you're 21. And it's like, we all know that that is not you, but how do you do that digitally? But I think even the stuff around like security being like, so much of it is like real life to the digital, but it's wild how much we try and separate it, like how much folks trying to act like it's two different conversations.
I mean, our lives are so enmeshed in digital now. There's not, the separation is so blurry. And like, it's crazy.
I mentioned I was working in ad tech before I came to Twilio, and one of the interesting things about there is like ad tech is like security, where it's a giant field that has all sorts of specializations, and there's a web of terribleness that's happening there, but it keeps the internet free. But one of the creepiest things that I learned about was the specific providers that will link your physical location to your digital presence. And so if you like go into a Jiffy Lube to try to like get an oil change or something, and you log onto the Jiffy Lube Wi-Fi, then they will like drop a cookie on your device that then will be able to be like, oh, this person was here, and now we know that they like take their car or have a car, and maybe we can sell that information to Jiffy Lube. And
yeah, I had a weird one once where someone was talking about our WhatsApp API, and they were like, why can't I see the person's location? I was like, I hope that's not a thing. There's like a way that they can share location and it's there, but like this person just like wanted everyone they interact with location. I'm like, that is so creepy.
I mean, like you could also get an IP address, and like an IP address is pretty location, like, not always obviously, but there's correlations there if someone's not using a VPN.
So I'm thinking about, okay, so this just might be like a side convo, but I think when I started to see this stuff around like the mobile driver licenses or things like that, but it's like sometimes when there's this like full push to be super digital, folks are like, oh, well, how does this affect those who might be older? I actually felt like that. So I had visited Jamaica, and they had everyone fill out the customs form digitally. And what started to happen is that folks didn't know the actual website. So like one of my friends like submitted stuff to some random website. So I think like there's that gap, right? Which is like, yes, we want everyone to be pushed to digital, but like now some random person on the web has her passport information because she thought it was like the custom site. And I don't know, I guess like how are we balancing that out, right? Because there's room for error. There's also room for us to get away from the very thing that we're trying to do, which is like security, decrease fraud. But I don't know, just like curious about like thoughts around, yes, digital, but also we don't have the supports, right?
Yeah. You almost need like a passkey on the other side, like verify. And we kind of have that with SSH, but it's very lax. Or SSL.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is like, I think there's like the two sides of this, like you're talking about, Alex, of like one of the things that comes to mind is if I call my bank, there's ways that they can verify who I am, but how do I verify it if my bank calls me?
Yeah.
Like that is actually kind of a hard thing to do. Like this, happened to me recently when I was like trying to do something with my bank. Like they said they were going to call me back, and then they did. But then I was like, so I was expecting the call, but then it was like I was doing like a wire transfer as part of this. And I was like, well, I don't want to like give you detailed information. Like, how do I know it's you? And the bank did an interesting thing that they were like, oh, well, we have a record here, because I asked them, I was like, how do I know it's you? And they were like, we have a record here that you talked to our support agent at like 1:15 p.m. yesterday. And I was like, okay, I did do that. And the fact that I'm expecting this call, like that's good enough for me right now. But that like two-way trust is hard. But like to your point, Bianca, about like the physical versus the digital side of things, I think that like also depends on the industry, right? And like the situation. Obviously there's a lot of like benefits to having things done digitally, like when you go to a doctor's office and you have to fill out like a paper form and then they put it into their computer. Like, why couldn't that be done digitally in the first place?
It also still kills me that like literally the only way to get like docs sent between your different provider offices like fax.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a balance.
This is like, do we have any like non-Americans in the audience? Like, is this better anywhere else? Or I know American healthcare has its own problems, but
I think, most places it's not there. I think everyone is trying to move. Yeah.
Do we have video? Do you know Corey's fax demo from years ago?
Did you you were using a fax machine?
Yeah, Twilio had the Twilio fax stories.
Demo,
didn't it start as a April Fool's joke that people started using, and you're like, well, I guess this is a product now.
The story I've heard is that somebody used to do the fax as like when they did like the internal company hackathon, somebody would always do the fax demo, and after presenting it like 5 years in a row, Jeff was like, basically just make this a product, like make it real.
Wow.
Yeah. We did launch on April 1st.
Okay. So it's like a real thing. So yeah.
But there was a fax demo at Signal that Corey had to step in for.
But yeah,
what year was that? I bet we can pull it up, but
it's probably
2017 maybe.
It's probably somewhere out there. No, yeah. With a lot of things, I feel like this to me goes into like when people say just throw tech on it versus being like, what are we actually trying to solve for? You want a way that's easy for you to like track and search, right? Are there other ways to do this that might not necessarily, require everyone goes on a computer, starts typing their information? So it's like, some folks still like the printed copies. So yeah, I think it's just figuring out like, what are we actually trying to solve for versus just like sprinkling tech, right, on it. We think about this, especially with like, what's that thing called? AI. And we're like, add some AI to it. And you're like, do you even know what this means? Like, what are we even saying here? Versus just being like, with this problem that you're trying to solve, is this the best solution? And
right.
Yeah.
No, this is one that comes up with authentication sometimes, right? Is like you'll see, or like when I still was on Twitter, like you would see this debate come up like every 3 months of somebody would be like in a CVS and they'd see one of those little notebooks that said like passwords on it. And they'd be like, oh my gosh, can you believe this? Like who would keep a notebook full of passwords? And it's
my grandfather.
Well, actually, that's like a pretty good solution for certain people, right? If it means you're more likely to have unique passwords, that's great. If you trust the people that you live with, which obviously like is not the case for everyone, but like that goes back to this idea of your own threat model, right? But then if you trust the people you live with, you like only the people that have access to your house or your home or wherever you keep that book, that's a pretty good solution. And then also for like people that might need to think about estates and passing that on, right? Like, can you imagine how nice it would be to like have a notebook of all of your a relative's passwords when you needed to get access to their accounts? Like that kind of thing is actually pretty useful.
No, we have folks that they have binders. I've seen different variations. Some people
binders full of passwords.
Literally the binder password, and it's like hidden in some places that we can't say on stream, but like you get all the things. So my
dad he switched to a password manager now, but like he used to have a password protected Excel spreadsheet that he kept on his computer, and like I thought that was like a really good solution.
That is smart. Okay, so we have fax machines. So like so take us back to the year of the fax.
What are you looking for here, Bianca?
The fax machine stuff. I feel like what is it? I know that like with that demo, like what was do folks have like ideas around like how they use it?
Well, fax doesn't work anymore. I think we turned it off.
Yeah.
No, not what. Y'all, I feel like this.
I'm so confused. Sorry.
Where are you going with this, Bianca?
I feel like every time, Alex, there's always something that Alex is like, Bianca, I am not following you, okay? No, I was just like, I feel like there's probably a video with what is it with the Twilio facts? That's what I was asking about.
We do. Yeah, I have. It was posted in chat.
Okay.
There's a video with a demo with the fax demo. It's not the like Signal live coding one.
Okay.
Like that
Gotcha.
exists somewhere. Remember, there's one where there's like a bank of fax machines behind Jeff.
Got it.
Coding
Okay.
gloves on and he does something.
And that was one where we're talking about having backups for demos, that one of the fax machines stopped working. Basically, there was like a line of fax machines above Jeff's head.
Okay.
That they were all then printing out, you know, like the paper that's all attached to each other. So there's these like reams of paper that were filing down from these fax machines to then paint a big picture using fax. One of the fax machines broke during the demo because it turns out running like 20 fax machines at one time is like a little risky.
They're printers. When's the last time a printer's worked 100% of the time?
Exactly.
These are good points. Good points. Okay.
And so our backup strategy for the demo was to have Corey Weathers, the legend himself, run out and tape up a pre-printed backup copy of one of these faxes to fill in the picture of the fax machine that was broken.
Wow.
Corey the Hurricane Weathers.
Wow.
Yeah, I will say it was so last year we did a barn burner with AI and with this crazy robot Amica, and I had to rehearse it over and over and over again because like I don't like every fifth time I did the demo, the AI would just go off the rails and would just like do weird stuff and things that they would literally burn a barn, which is hard. But
what is the origin for the word barn burner? Like I feel like I hear that, but I don't actually know what it means.
I'm sorry, Alex. Alex was like, it would literally burn a barn, and it
was because Roberta was saying burn a barn.
No, but the way you followed up with like, and it was hard. I was like, oh my gosh, so much happening. No, but I'm glad you told the story about the fax machines. I was like legit curious, but then I realized that y'all weren't following, and I couldn't. Yeah, I started to. Why am I crying on stream? Laughter, tears. Okay, all right, we're good. Okay.
Let's see. Roberta Bowles gave us an explanation. I don't know. The word barn burner dates back to the 1800s. It was originally and is still primarily used in the US. It's a reference to a story about a farmer whose method of getting rid of the rats that infested his barn was burning down the barn entirely. That's not, I think, what we're going for on this one.
What we
But I think the idea for it was like, it's like the thing at the end that was like, we just told you about all this cool tech. Now let's like show you it live. And if it doesn't work, we're on fire. Like it almost felt like it was like, we're going to burn the whole thing down. And then like, that's how we're going to show that it's actually like doing what it's supposed to do. I don't know.
It sounds cool. You sound convincing. So we can go with that. Okay. So, okay. All right.
The term's usage has changed.
It has the, so yeah. It sounds, so, it could be made up. This could be a real thing. You did do one, so
but
we'll trust
at Twilio, it's the live demo that we do as part of Signal. Like that's the thing that it is at Twilio. So like one year it was like the OK Go where they were like using phones to play the songs. I would never lie to you, Roberta Bowles, unless we're playing one of those games where it's like, you have to like lie
Mafia.
about who you are. Like Mafia, then I would lie to you. But otherwise,
it's the acting and part of it all comes together, Kelley, because you have the musical theater. There's some acting involved with security, so it's just is it lying? Is it acting? You don't know. But this was it's very.
Kelley, do you think you could pull off being a penetration tester, like a pen tester? Like just going back to like an earlier conversation. I always thought that would be such an interesting job. I don't think I could do it.
Here's the thing about it though, like I feel like 80% of pen testing is like writing up reports after the pen test, and I feel like I would be really good at that part.
Okay.
I love writing a good report. I am so lame like that, but I think I would. The part of the thing with that would like get really frustrating for me just as a human of who I am is that like I don't know if I would get really frustrated if I like couldn't do the thing. Or how do you know when you've like done enough like testing? I don't know.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a good part.
Have I ever participated in organized red team days? I have not. So if people don't know, there's this idea of red team and blue team. Red team is like the offensive security. So these are the people trying to do the hacking. Sometimes you will bring in consultants to do this. So there's like specific companies that will do like penetration testing as a service. And so they'll like try to, with permission, hack your site or hack your contact center and see like where the holes are. And then there's the defensive security, which is often known as the blue team. And they're the ones that are trying to make that hard to do and do the protections. And so I do not know what red team days are, if that is like an official designation or an official event, but I have not ever done that.
I in grad school, I got to know some of the people that were like in the, I guess I was at ASU and I was doing robotics, and there was also people in CS that were in the like security team, and there was a lot of like they would do like capture the flag, like CTF, where they like are, it's like a competition, like hacking competitions. But yeah, some of the stuff that they could do and that they like understood at a base level was just wild and like
yeah.
But I am curious with that. So I have some friends that are like lawyer friends, and like I'm just like, how do you not like you see the worst sometimes of people? You're like, wow, can't believe you did that. So how do you keep yourself kind of like optimistic in a place where you're seeing kind of the ways in which people are pushing the bounds, right? Like of technology all the time. Because I've noticed some of my lawyer friends, they're like, well, actually, I can't go into this room, and here's where I could sue this person. Here's where, like, there's a breach of contract here.
Yeah. A lot of the security people know that I know kind of don't. If I'm being honest, like, there's like a specific model of laptop from 2008 that they all have, because it's the last one. It was the last IBM where you could like access the firmware like root, and like they're all very but I don't know. I mean, you're in this world more than I am, Kelley. I just like don't think about it a lot, so I'm curious.
I mean, like this is like I use a password manager. I have strong unique passwords for all of my accounts. I don't reuse passwords. I think that's like the baseline of what you can do. I turn on two-factor authentication when it's available for most of my accounts, but not all. Because this is like you hear the term threat model thrown around a lot, right? And this is something where like I definitely have 2FA turned on for my Gmail, for my bank accounts, for these things that would be really problematic if I got hacked. I do have an account with Domino's Pizza. I don't think I have two-factor authentication turned on.
Someone's gonna order so many pizzas on your account. Be careful. I was thinking like, do you have 2FA turned on for Neopets? Like,
what if that happens, Alex?
I know. I was being serious.
Oh my
You'd be out a lot of pizza.
All I just envisioned was like
Can I tell you the best story of when I got hacked? This was like over 15 years ago. It was long before I worked in like tech, let alone in security. I had a Netflix account, and this was back when Netflix was both was still mostly DVDs, but then like a little bit of like physical or digital streaming. But someone hacked my Netflix account and changed, like at this point I feel like this must have just been like a joke that happened. It wasn't actually malicious, because they changed my entire queue of DVDs to be delivered to me to all of Nicolas Cage's filmography. Didn't change my address or anything. It was just like, everything that was like in the list of like what was next to be sent to me by mail was every movie that Nick Cage had ever
Honestly,
made,
there's
which even like 15 years ago was a lot of movies.
Yeah, there's certain pranks that I'm just like, these are good. Like a good prank like makes you laugh, doesn't like you were out some DVDs for a month or a week, whatever, like not a big deal. Like that is a good prank.
But like no one ever owned up to it. So I was
what
like,
I bet you like left your computer open and
I must have, yeah.
That is the work. No, that is so, I mean, I love how you're just like, you know, instead of, I had some leftover tears. Instead of, you know, like, instead of feeling like constrained by what you know, like you're like, okay, how do I make sure that I'm being mindful, right? Like on the web. So I do like how you're like, hey, I have all this insight, but you know, whether it's two-factor, whether it's not reusing passwords, and it's like there are ways that we can feel like equipped, rather than just like.
I think some of it too is just like accepting the fact that if somebody really wanted to hack me bad enough, like not a lot of things that I would be able to do would be able to stop them, which is like a little fatalistic, but like. There's really only so much that I can do. And part of me is just relying on like the security through obscurity side of things too, right? Of like who really is interested in, you know, getting into certain accounts of mine.
Security through that's a real security through obscurity. And like I think of that a lot. And one of the things that like at one point I was thinking about doing on stream is like installing home automation. And then I realized like I can't do that. Because home automation is one area where like obscurity, no one's going to bother. But as soon as it's public, someone's going to try to mess with it. Like, so yeah, that's real. Robertable said there's a donut rule. If someone walked away from the computer, you'd go on Slack and do something better. One of those security guys in grad school had a USB dongle that he would walk around with. And if somebody left their computer open, he would plug it in, and he had written a script called suDolphin. And every time you type sudo, your entire terminal filled with like dolphin, like text-based dolphins jumping. And I was like, wait, I want this just for real. And like there was instructions on how to remove it. Like it was a very nice hack, but it was like one of those fun ones. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's a party today. Oh shoot. We have a longtime listener, Carly. Carly has joined us on the stream. Today was like we've been having a party today on stream. Yeah. And I think I love it because like I told you, it's the Kelley show. And I think security, authentication, all these things can be these very like, like, you know, like you're just like, wow, how exciting.
Well, don't forget Robertable's in here reminding us that AI is making us all more vulnerable. So
yeah.
Wow.
Which is true. So we're here with the downers too.
Yes, we're holistically, you know, we're holistic.
Maybe we need to like share passphrases with family members. It's like, Dad, if something's really important, I'm going to mention this thing, and you'll know. Yeah,
they do. I mean, they kind of use it in some ways. Like my mom will be like, "Is everything okay?" Like if my voice sounds a little different, it's like, "Wow, you don't sound like typical Bianca." So I feel like there's already ways that our family members are like, "You wouldn't mention this."
Yeah.
Yes. So, no, yeah. It's,
what is that thing that like you would say if you were like being held captive? That like anyone who knows you well would know that like. It was like you were in trouble. What is that thing for you?
Let's see. I mean, but if I say it on stream, then they know. Then they know.
Okay, we've got some good ones. Tofrog says poodle. We'll only say poodle if it's an emergency. We know that.
Squirrel.
Oh my gosh.
Chef Brent squirrel.
Oh my gosh. So right before this stream happened, my dog started barking like obnoxiously. This is definitely a tangent. She loves to bark at squirrels and cats that she sees in the backyard. It's, you know, all over. But there was a groundhog in our backyard, and we have a garden, and groundhogs are terrible for gardens. And so we actually like let the dog out so she could chase the groundhog away. She was having the best time, and I hope the groundhog never comes back.
Sounds like a vibe. I will say when you're talking about the like passkeys, it made me think about like Twitter. I feel like Twitter, well, or X as they now call it. But like the way that people would always tell everyone all their info, I'm like, this TikTok trend or this X trend is not helpful to your security goals. Like, I now know, like, all, like, I don't know. It was just so much information. And I was just like, wow, this is not, I know you want to participate in this trend, but like,
yeah. Didn't the person who ran like LifeLock or something did one where he like gave his social security number to be like, this is how good LifeLock is, and then he still got hacked. It was something weird like that where he's like, and it just didn't work.
I think people forget, like, when you're on the internet, like, you'd be surprised like how easy, like, you're painting a picture, you're telling a story, you know, for a lot of people to use. I will say I definitely probably confuse the internet. But like I do think like little ways. I use my alias. I have my like side name that I use for things, but it's like, it's helpful because it's like you gotta trip up the systems a little bit every now and then.
Yeah, like get the algorithm guessing.
Yeah.
There's another thing that I just thought about too, because we've talked about like how AI opens all these things. There's also the flip side, which is like, if you have a personal AI that knows you well enough, in theory, that could also be a security feature. It might know like, oh, because like, think about how good banks have gotten about knowing if it's your credit card that you like a charge that you made. Like, we used to get tons of being like, did you really buy this thing? Yes, I'm traveling. I'm currently in Spain. I bought this thing. That's like, you had to tell your credit cards that you were gone. Now they know because they know that you bought the ticket. And it's like, so like, even AI, like we think about it as this thing, and it might also be the flip side of like, you might have a personal AI that for like 80 or 90% of the cases might save you because they know you better. So like it could go both ways.
This is like the model that we're using for like the Verify Fraud Guard stuff, which is helping prevent the SMS pumping fraud that happens, which is like, okay, like this business sees a lot of SMSs coming from, you know, the US and France and Germany and South Korea, like maybe, for example, but then all of a sudden, like you start seeing accounts trying to log in incessantly from Vietnam. And it's like, well, that doesn't seem right. Like using that anomaly detection essentially, but that's like a less exciting, but super practical and useful way that we're using AI.
No, it's funny because I was just thinking about like when Alex made that example, I was like, there was one time I had purchased like, you know, a nice little bag, but I felt like my bank was like, Bianca, you're used to being cheap. What is this? This like, who is this? Who is this profile of a luxury shopper? I don't know her. And like,
who is she?
Who is she? And so I think it's funny because it's like we have these different identities that emerge. There's like my travel identity. There's my like, ooh, some of these things have evolved. So I do think it's like funny, even this like AI space of just like every summer you turn into vacationing, Bianca. Like, okay, we now know that version of you. So I think it's kind of interesting, the sense of like we have different identities, you know.
But I mean, this is literally the thing that we're like trying to do with Segment, right? It's like build up profiles for businesses with this kind of information, so that then they like know you and can use that data to like inform decisions. And I think there's definitely opportunities to do that for security. And this is where like going back to the things we were talking about earlier with like the step up authentication or authorization for different actions, right? Like maybe I'm not concerned if like Alex is, you know, looking at a bunch of different documents, but all of a sudden Alex starts to go try to like make deposits and we're like, oh, we've never seen Alex do that before.
Yeah, it's I will say, so that definitely has been a thing. I think, sorry, I'm just thinking about all the scenarios in life, and I was like, I could see how this looks a little suspicious. So whenever I'm doing something, I'm like, does this look suspicious to the internet? Or like, you know, those massive deposits, like I've had to tell my mom, I was like, Mom, don't, the story is not looking good. You know, like, ultimately you're just like telling a story, you know? But yeah,
Yeah.
no, this is too hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to like why we're so, as a society, so like we put up with the amount of information that people collect on us because we like the ads that we get. And like that might just continue down the road of like we put up with all the different information that people are gathering on us because it's beneficial. And maybe security is one of those ways. That would be a nice turnaround of these tables of like, we're okay with the amount that people are gathering on us because it makes our, makes things more secure. I don't know if that's always going to be the case, and there's probably a lot of holes in that, but like, it's possible.
I'm like, was the chat hacked?
Yeah, the chat was hacked by Soylent.
I was like, this seems like irregular chat activity live on screen. I'm like, oh man, oh man.
Bye, Corey.
No, this is too good.
Corey's leaving. We're probably gonna.
Oh yeah, no. This was like a party. I feel like I love how you reinvigorated our excitement for I think all things like security, authentication, and I think even just making it accessible. And I definitely want to give you your flowers on stream. I love how you pull people along for the journey rather than being like security, and we don't talk about this.
Sandra has inspired me. I really got to work on my explain like I'm 5 about passkeys.
Yeah, that was a great comment from Sandra. I really appreciate that. And that's why we love the chat, because you guys get to ask us questions that we weren't thinking about us.
Yeah, no, it's like super solid. And again, thank you so much, Kelley, for like hanging out with us on basically the Kelley Show with the special guests, A and B. But yeah, no, this is super awesome. And I feel like, again, check out the blogs. Kelley drops some stuff every now and then on there. But yeah, Alex, any thoughts?
No, I really appreciated this. I don't have too much to add. I love the Kelley Show is a joke running from the last Signal event where there was like a you guys did like a vodcast with Jeff and you were on there, and then everyone leaves at the end and you're like, well, I guess we're calling it the Kelley Show. Yeah, there you go. I had it up on screen. This is always, I have this timestamp on this video because this is the next thing that happens is I come out listening to I'm a Barbie Girl. So like that I always like have this timestamp saved because I know like we do the Kelley Show bit. But yeah, it's just so amazing to have you, and I love how much education you're trying to do around the security stuff, because it can be kind of dry and it can be a little bit hard to grasp and hard to understand. But like, I appreciated you're showing us like, oh, this part's really hard, and like I had that problem when I was making this demo. So that's awesome. And if it makes you feel better, we were talking about like demos not going well. I have still yet to build something working on this stream. Next week we're gonna do it though. Next week, Bianca and I are gonna come back. We're gonna build a demo for one of our upcoming webinars for the Builder Workshop happening in June, and we're gonna build that demo, and it will work, because if it doesn't work, we've got problems.
No, this is good. Well, thank you, everyone. Everyone in chat, thank you so much for hanging out with us. This was such a vibe. Join us back again next Tuesday, 2 p.m. EST. It's a party.
It's always a party.
Ooh, got some Kelley dances.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Yeah. All right.
We'll have you again soon, Kelley.
Yes,
for sure. For sure.
I'll
yes.
I'll do more code.
Sweet.
I like the vision.
Yeah. Code's fun. Talking's fun. We have fun with it all.
We do.
Really matter.
All the fun. But yeah, so yeah, we'll see y'all next Tuesday. All right. It's been real, y'all.
Yeah. Bye. Thanks for joining.